Welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. So, as you know, I've been talking about the fire that ravaged Pacific Palisades, which is a place that I have lived and absolutely loved for the last 23 years. I was on the radio with Tim Conway Jr. on KFI AM 640 just a few nights ago, and he was kind enough to stop by our 4th of July party. And when we were talking about the fires, he, the first thing that occurred to him was the number of people that he met at the 4th of July party who were friends and neighbors from Pacific Palisades. These lifelong friendships that I've been lucky enough to develop. And, his point was, it's so rare you move to a neighborhood and you meet with people that you connect with and you want to be friends with, even after your children are no longer in school together. And he said, no matter what you do, make sure that group of people that you're still friends with, that I met at 4th of July, that you somehow stick together, that you fight and push against whatever bureaucracy and whatever regulations, so you all get back to Pacific Palisades, which is what we all want. Obviously, some of my very best friends have lost their homes, and it's not just stuff. When you lose the contents of your home, you're losing the very last thing that someone wrote to you before they died. You're losing pictures of family members of which there are not digitized copies. You're losing pieces of art that are either priceless, that were gifted to you, or that your children made when they were in their first years of preschool. And there are so many things that you can never get back, but living in Southern California, evacuation is a way of life. We've been evacuated for all sorts of things, particularly wildfires. And even though it only happens once every 18 months to 2 years, you take a box of stuff and you come back the next day, which is what everyone assumed they would do, including one of my closest friends. I was lucky enough to meet Trish. Our daughters were in a music class when they were 18 months old, and I realized that Trish was a kindred spirit because she and I were making fun of the teacher in the same way under our breath, and our girls became fast friends, and then they went through 3 years of preschool at the most magical preschool that has ever been in existence. It's not one of the highfalutin fancy ones that a lot of celebrities attend. It's the kind of preschool where moms show up with baked goods and they do painting and crafts with the kids. There's such high parental involvement of really sweet, down-to-earth parents who raised just absolutely beautiful children who had their start in school here at this incredible nurturing environment. What was so amazing about that preschool is every single kid who went through there got a piece of tile that they got to paint and do whatever they want on that piece of tile. And, when you're 2, 3, 4 years old, it is utter pure emotion and sweetness that comes out. And they don't give the tile to the family. They put these tiles up on the outside of the preschool as if to say, every kid who went here is special to us. And every person here is a member of our family. And they will be remembered for the impression that they made on this preschool forever. Now, when I was on the 5, I learned for the first time from Jonathan Hunt, who was reporting that the preschool, Methodist preschool attached to the church, had burned down. And his producer had shown me a series of tiles on the ground that had fallen off the building when it burned, but the tiles still remain, as the friendships do. Trish joins me now. Trish Allison is an amazing photographer. You can find her work on Instagram at Trish Allison. She's been a resident of the Palisades for a long time. She has 2 girls that are essentially the same age as my girls, and we've grown up together as parents and friends, doing our very best, fighting the trials of life through laughter and tears together. And Trish joins me now. So, Trish, tell me about when you first evacuated. First of all, welcome. I'm so happy to talk to you. I'm so happy that you and your girls are safe.
Me too. Thank you. So good to see you.
So tell me about the fire is bearing down on the Palisades. I'm in New York. I was getting pictures from Todd and Lindy and Nick and Kathy and Andrew and various neighbors who were showing me how close it was. I had never seen anything like it. So what was going through your mind in terms of what you were putting into your car and taking away, and just what was happening in that moment?
Well, it was interesting because I could see smoke and it was still in the distance, but then you could see the flames and it was slowly moving down the hill, but the wind was pushing towards Malibu. So it was like, should we pack up? Should we not pack up? And then it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And so I always had a go bag prepared, which had passports, birth certificates, cash, that kind of thing, because as you referenced, we've had to evacuate in the past. I slowly put that by the door. And then my youngest, London, was home sleeping because it was still holiday break for Pali High. So I just was very conscious of waking her up gently as to not panic her out of a sleep, but just say, hey, you probably should get up. There's some smoke happening. Maybe you need to leave. And we just packed up some things thinking we were leaving for air quality, not thinking the town was going to burn down. I was in my side yard watching all those minutes I could have gotten back, but thinking, you know what, let's just take some pillows, some blankets, a couple precious things, and let's just load up and go. The majority of our time was trying to find our cat, who is an indoor-outdoor cat like many in the Palisades. And so we ultimately spent a lot of time trying to get her, and we're not successful in that. And then it went from a casual, let's just pack up because of air quality, to we have to get out of here.
And did that happen pretty quickly? Could you see the flames?
It did. I could see the flames. I could see flames burning houses down in the highlands. And then the smoke was so billowing and the whole sky was just so dark and the wind was so blowing so hard that in that last minute, we got the evacuation for Sunset Mesa area. Wasn't for us yet. We just knew in that very last minute, it's time to get in and we have to go, and we have to go now.
So you pack up the car, the go bag, your dog, your cameras, your daughter, and it's dawning on you that this is pretty serious. Was it hard to get out of the Palisades at that point?
So that was the reason we decided to bolt right away, is because we had started hearing from text messages and people saying that traffic was building up. And so where my panic was getting caught in the car. Fortunately, both my daughters were home. So my older daughter had her car. So we were both taking our vehicles. And when I got in the car with her, I said, please don't go towards Temescal, go towards Brentwood to get out of Sunset. We were all kind of panicked. So she, of course, was on autopilot, went towards Temescal. So that terrified me. So I was on the phone with her. She was stuck in a traffic jam trying to get back out. And so it took us about 30 minutes to get out of the Palisades. Everyone was calm, but in the rearview mirror, it was like an apocalypse. It was a billowing cloud of smoke chasing us out.
Yeah, I couldn't believe the images. I'd never seen anything like that.
No.
I just always assumed that, because you and I both have houses, the Palisades is set up so, there are bluffs, which are essentially these plains on cliffs overlooking the ocean. It's not oceanfront, but they're neighborhoods in grids, with like 2-story homes, 3-4 bedrooms, very typical neighborhood. And then you have portions in the hills. And if you know LA wildfires, you know that the hills are more likely to burn. And so as flatlanders, we always assumed that we were safe. We've got 2 fire stations in the Palisades with, some of the most experienced veteran firefighters on LAFD. And, I always assumed that if, God forbid, there was a wildfire like that, they would never let that much real estate burn. But boy, was I wrong.
Me as well. We would always, where my house was, I have a fire hydrant in my front yard. So I always thought, no matter what, the fire's never going to cross Temescal Canyon. The fire's never going to go through Pali High and go through all this real estate to get to my tiny little house with a fire hydrant in the front yard. And, I drove there again yesterday and really drove through the Palisades looking. The amount of space that this fire hit, you can't even wrap your brain around it. The entire town is gone, but for so much distance is covered, it's unbelievable to me that it couldn't or wouldn't be stopped.
Now, a good friend, Lindy, sent me a report of the number of homes that burned and the percentage of homes that burned. The Almedia Bluffs, it was 48%. The Alphabet Streets, 93%. Bienvenida, 55%. Marquez Knolls, 59%. Las Casas, 93%. I mean, this is just an unbelievable, unimaginable, the Via Bluffs, 82% of the homes burned to the ground.
That's my area.
It's like these are thousands and thousands of homes and structures. And, with that, the schools burned down, a majority of them. And your main job as a photographer is taking all the school pictures for all the students in the Palisades. What was going through your mind as you saw the schools start to burn? Because that was before you heard about your home.
Right. You hear about the schools. My first thought wasn't work. It was about the fact that my kids could never go back to show their kids one day where they went to this precious preschool. That preschool changed all of our lives. That's where all of our friendships were made. They can't go back to their elementary school. And now they can't even go to school in high school. So that was my first thought. It's just that history is erased. Those places are no longer, it's wiped off the map. And then for me, work-wise, this happened during COVID when schools closed. So these children are going to relocate, and I will follow them, and I want to capture these new memories, because now more than ever, we know the importance of photographs.
Yes.
Because that's all that's getting me through this time right now, is looking back at precious memories, because that's all many people have now. Everything else is gone.
So you didn't know if your home had survived.
No.
But one of your neighbors basically climbed up a dirt embankment and snuck into the Palisades to check on the homes. What was that conversation like with him? So
the morning after the fires, you wake up and, you have to understand, no one's calling you, telling you, 500 Mount Holyoke is gone. There was no structure like that to be informed. So we were all glued to the news and kind of hearsay if any neighbor had any information. The fire maps weren't being updated. So my neighbor's like, your house is fine, your house is fine. And you wake up with a glimmer of hope, thinking that the fire map is accurate, but they weren't being updated. The breadth of this was just way too deep. Like, you couldn't stay ahead of it. So my best friend, who happened to live 2 blocks down from me, got an e-bike, went up, snuck up basically, and was able to see for his own eyes that there was nothing there. And so he gave me a call with another Palisades dad, 2 of my dearest friends, and I still had hope at that time. So I answered the phone and I was like, oh, Pally Dad's saving the day, keeping it light. And I heard them both bawling, saying, I'm so sorry, it's all gone, there's nothing left. I still didn't believe it. And I said, I need to see a picture, please. And so they sent me, a smoke-filled picture of an empty lot with a burned out car in front of it.
Does it make it any better that so many other people lost their homes?
It's an interesting thing because, yes, on one hand, yes. Do I want anyone else to experience this? Absolutely not. But all of my closest friends who have become family, because that's what the Palisades is, your friends become your family, they're all experiencing the exact same thing. So it's interesting because you can't really be there for each other like you could, because you can't fix it for your friends. But we're all trauma bonded now. We all know exactly what it feels like to have gone through this. So there's a lot of unspokenness because we all know it. It's hard to finish a thought. It's hard to finish a task. It's hard to get up some days. And we all know those feelings now. So there's that support group that's built in because we're all living through this trauma. I'm finding it really difficult to have conversations or even relate to people that haven't gone through this right now, because it's all consuming and it is forever changing the trajectory of our lives.
So tell me, when did, so our home survived mercifully, and, we're so incredibly grateful to be able to go back and, I was able to see some of the things that I had feared that we had lost, because I packed the dumbest go box in the history of people trying to survive a cataclysmic event. Never trust me to pack your go box, because it will be essentially useless. But I was cataloging in my mind all the things that I had left, and I felt like I had failed my family. I felt so guilty. Um, what are you doing with those feelings? How do you process feelings like that? Because, of course, people say, well, there's nothing you can do about it now, so don't cry over spilt milk. And people do say some incredibly insensitive things, thinking they're being helpful. But how are you processing those emotions, thinking of what you left behind?
It's astounding because every night, I'm not sleeping much. It's automatic now where my body is going from room to room to room thinking, I had my hands on this. Why didn't I grab that? Why didn't I think to do this? And it's almost debilitating. And I'm trying to learn how to flip it and be grateful for the fact that, the girls and I are okay. Our pets are okay. We were able to grab some things. Some people weren't able to grab a thing. Some people weren't home. So I try to switch it and see the silver lining of the things that we were able to grab, but I don't think it's ever going to be able to turn off. I'll be walking and all of a sudden it'll hit me, oh, the Christmas ornaments. Every 6 seconds you think of something like, oh my gosh, the handwritten letter Madeline wrote me for Christmas. I had it up on my desk. Why didn't I grab that? So I think it's going to forever haunt me and everyone that's gone through this because, again, it's not just the physical house. It's the items in it, the sentimental things. Our house is our safe haven. It was like the soul of me and my girls, and every little inch of that was precious. The wall where we measured the heights, that's gone forever. You can't replicate that. You can't get that back. So it's really, really difficult, and it's going to take a lot of, I think, mental strength to forgive myself and to keep moving forward.
Don't go anywhere. More Kennedy Saves the World right after this.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing is seeing people go through their lots and, just parsing through the ash and the rubble. And I know that you had the help of some Oregon firefighters. Did that bring you some solace being able to go back and revisit whatever you could salvage?
It did, because I was able to get back basically by holding my breath and really dodging the National Guard, to be honest. It was before it was open to residents, but I was getting back there. Really, I wanted to see it for my own eyes, and my cat was still missing at the time. So I just drove, and to be honest, I didn't even look through the Palisades because I was just wanting to get back to the house. I got to the house, and it was just, it's like a scene out of a movie. I think your brain protects you from even absorbing the fact that it's real. So it's really hard to put into words. And so I was there. I felt this sense of peace because in a way the Palisades is still there. It still felt like home, but the physical house wasn't there. And I was calling for my cat, and this wonderful firefighter just came up to ask, like, hey, if I see your cat, what's the name? He took a picture of it. And then he looked at me and he said, do you want me to call a crew and we can, have some men and women help you dig in the rubble? And it's something I'll never forget. There were 6 men and women who dug for 2.5 hours, and they dug as if it was their own house. Oh. They dug and dug and dug to the point where I was like, we need to take a water break. It was unbelievable. They were looking for any little scrap of anything, and they did. And they put little pieces of glass or little pieces of something. They were able to stand in the house and be like, okay, I can tell a nightstand was here. I can tell, and I don't know how. There's nothing left, but they were able to see where the box springs were and things like that. And I could hear them talking to each other. Okay, I think the daughter's desk was here. There's got to be something here. I think the material in the bathroom usually protects because it's usually marble or something a little bit more protective. So they spent a lot of time in the bathroom just to find, they pieced together my kitchen because it was, some pots and pans that aren't, you can't use, but they kind of put together my kitchen again. It was just unbelievable, and I'll never, ever forget it.
So let's talk about Penelope, because you're worried about your cat. It's been several days. You have your dog, the indoor-outdoor cat. I know there were people who so selflessly helped you, like it was their life's work to help you and other pet owners who were in the same situation, whose pets either fled or they have outdoor cats. And, these are our family members. And tell me about the people who helped you look for Penelope, because you didn't even know if she was alive.
No. I had some hope knowing that cat loved being outside and she was a survivor. I had no idea who to contact or how to, figure this out, and you're not allowed back.
I just want to stop you for 1 second before you continue, just to sort of paint the picture. Yes, it's an outdoor cat, but the flames were 30 feet high and they were bearing down on Trish's house from all sides. They were coming up the hillside from the ocean. They were coming down the hillside from Temescal Park. They had engulfed the entire Palisades and the high school. So she was boxed in on all sides by flames, and that's what ravaged her home and her neighborhood and burned everything in its path. So that is what a cat would have to navigate. So go ahead, as you were saying.
And for hours, those flames burned forever. So it wasn't just a quick fire, it was hours and hours and hours. So fast forward a couple days after the fires, I had one organization, I think it was Viva organization, that were boots on the ground looking to see if they could find remains on my property. And once they couldn't find that, I had the biggest sense of relief. That my fear was she had jumped back in the window to get back in the house to escape the fire. So that was my biggest fear, that she was trying to get back home to be safe. Turns out she was smart enough to, wherever she took off to is where she was ultimately able to survive. About a week after the fire or so, these amazing women had set traps and cameras around the Palisades, and they contacted me and said, I think this is Penelope. And there was a black and white still shot of, a night cam. So it was, almost, it felt like a hostage situation where you're looking for a proof of life. And I was taking a picture of Penelope and matching it up just to see if there's
anything, any spot, any marking.
Any spot. Literally, I was zooming in and trying to see. And honestly, I told the woman, no, this isn't her. She looks too fat. But what was happening is so many wonderful people and so many organizations were looking for pets. They were leaving food everywhere. So I think she was having a feast. So she was living her best life, just going from wet food to the dry food to whatever she wanted. So she's the only cat that not only withstood flames, but also, gained some weight. So long story short, they had captured her pretty consistently at night on 2 different cameras around the corner from my house. And I couldn't take it anymore. So I started going in at night and sitting and waiting for her. And I would hide my car. And again, this is before anyone was allowed in, and especially past curfew.
Yeah.
And I would sit in the dark with my gas mask on. My daughter would come with me and we would sit and we would wait. And she was so scared. She wasn't coming towards us either. And that was heartbreaking. As construction crews and, LEDWP, everyone that's coming in, there's more and more trucks during the day. There's people jackhammering the streets. I was getting terrified because time's not on our side. These animals are terrified. And now there's all these strange noises and loud noises. Also keep in mind all the wild animals that have been displaced. Yeah. So my neighbor saw her outrun in the middle of the day. A coyote was chasing her during the middle of the day.
Oh.
So she has beat a lot of things. And then cut to one morning, they trapped her in a cage, basically in the same areas where they've seen her, and I think she was just ready to come home.
So she knew, instinctively, she knew, all right, this is my way back to my family. Enough of the coyote fitness camp and, the empathetic buffet. I have to get back to my mom.
Yeah,
so
it's time. And it was so interesting because they called for the reunification and she was in a cage and I looked at her and it was like she looked past me. It was so eerie. It was so sad. She was so in shock. She kind of was not. And then once I held her, she melted and started purring and was amazing. And then that cat slept for about 3 days straight.
Oh.
She just slept. And then we made it so cozy for her because if you think about it, I was talking to my daughters and I was like, she hasn't had anything soft to be on for 23 days. And then we finally let her kind of go around this new house. Of course, now she doesn't know where she is. And the first thing she did is went up the chimney. And my older daughter said, don't you realize, though, that's how she survived?
Oh, wow.
Because the only thing
that survived were chimneys.
Are chimneys. Yeah. And literally where she was trapped was right outside the chimney in my neighbor's yard.
Wow. So yeah. I can't, because I was following, obviously I was talking to you and texting you, but I was also, because you had documented all of this so poignantly on Instagram. And again, it's at Trish Allison if you if you want to read some of these tales about the cat. But, it's like when I was driving through the Palisades when I read the post that you guys were reunited, and I just burst into tears. It was, I needed a piece of good news in all of this, because everyone I know, save, the few homes on our street, everyone I know lost their home and lost everything they had worked for. And there was so much sadness on top of so much guilt and trying to shield kids from the pain and destruction and, the inability to process the loss. I just needed like one glimmer of hope, and Penelope provided that.
She really did. I mean, she's just the silver lining to all of it. It's just like miracles do happen. We all needed it. We needed it personally for our family to feel complete. The people of the Palisades needed it for a glimmer of hope of like some good news that came out of this hell that is our lives. And it's truly remarkable.
So what do you do now? What do you think the next year looks like for you? And will you make your way back to the Palisades?
My goal 100% is to go back to the Palisades. My heart is there. Everything I want to work for is to rebuild and go back there. I went back yesterday, like I mentioned, and it seems insurmountable right now. The devastation, the amount of work it's going to take for that town to come back is not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a very long process. It's going to take a lot of patience. And sadly, it's also horrible because my daughter's going to be graduated out of high school by the time we even think about, I'm sure, even breaking ground. It's just the dreams of finishing raising my kids there is gone. So I will find my way back to the Palisades. Every single second of me working is going towards making that happen. And that's, to me, where I want to be for the rest of my life. That gives me hope. That gives me purpose to work. It gets me out of bed in the morning because I'm going to go back.
And it is that spirit that you share with so many people who live there who want to get back. They want to get back to their friendship and their families and their community. And, I know you. I know the people our children have grown up with, and they're incredible. They are patient. They are hardworking. They are supportive of one another. And, that part of it has been truly beautiful to see and to experience. And that goodness and that optimism and that selflessness, I truly, truly believe will be rewarded. And I'm so happy your family is safe. I'm so happy Penelope is back. And I look forward to revisiting this as, you continue the building process and the town does, because, it takes people to come together and, be patient, because we know we're on a long road. But as you point out, and, as you live a very thoughtful and selfless life, it's that kind of spirit that will bring everybody together, that will ultimately prevail. Trish Allison, thank you so much. I love you.
Thank you. Love you. Thank you.
This has been Kennedy Saves the World. Penelope saved all of us. I'm Kennedy.
Team Penelope.
Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app. Oh, go ahead and leave me a review while you're there. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You've been listening to Kennedy Saves the World on the Fox News Podcast Network.